Hey there, Tim Nolan here with the Modern Leadership Podcast. Second episode, so really excited to get off the ground. Look, I even got a little shirt here. Figured let's give it a shot. So today's episode, I want to look at manager engagement. And what's really interesting is Gallup has published something regarding the global employee engagement report they do. And so what they have found is that employee engagement has gone from 23% to 21%. So again, 21% of people responding are self-reporting that they're engaged with their work. Very, very low number. In fact, I think this is the lowest Gallup has come across. Now, but more concerning was manager engagement. And what they found was, in this last report, it went from 30% to 27%. So a 3% drop in managers reporting that they're engaged at work. Now, this may not seem like a big drop. It's a very low number to begin with, but it's declining, and that's what the concerning point is. But I think looking a little bit deeper. And today we're going to look at the reasons, the causes, but also solutions, not only for organizational leaders, but also if you are a manager, if you manage people, then how would you rate yourself? And I think a really good baseline to really start looking at is the engagement scale. So let's start with the lowest, and it's a 5-point scale. So 1 would be someone who hates their job. They really can't stand it, and the first chance they get, they're out. Okay. Number 2 is someone that does the bare minimum. It's really apathy. They just don't really care. I get paid. It's cool, whatever. But so 2. 3 is someone who's from time to time can be engaged, but it's very inconsistent, and performance is probably slightly above just meeting expectations. And then 4, that's when you start getting into the green zone. And that's someone who's engaged. 4 is engaged would be really high level work, really. Occasionally maybe bringing up some ideas, maybe occasionally helping other people out, taking initiative, things of that nature. And then 5 is highly engaged. Highly engaged is someone who not only has high levels of individual performance, but then now you're approaching this almost like a halo area where they are helping teammates out. They're taking initiative to whether participate in different programs or maybe committees. They're really taking the lead. And so again, not only are they a strong performer, but they're also helping out their colleagues. And that's when that separation occurs, from engaged to highly engaged. And so what does this look like on a manager level? So if you're a 1, you probably shouldn't be, or a 2, I would argue, you shouldn't be leading people if you're a 1 or 2, because people probably are not going to want to work for you. So, but if you find yourself, engaged from time to time, and then 4 is, you're doing a great job of managing your people. But then 5 is when not only are you doing a great job of managing your people, but you're collaborating with other managers and other departments. You're taking that initiative. And I'm reminded of a friend of mine who's worked in the financial industry for 30 plus years. And this guy, he is like LinkedIn before LinkedIn came around. He has just a repository of like all these people that he's connected with. And he's always talking to them, or he's like, I just had, dinner with, Kevin. We used to work together 20 years ago at this one bank. And it's great. So he just has such a great network. And so if you're highly engaged as a manager, that's what it looks like, is you're collaborating not only with people within your organization, but even outside. Could be prior colleagues, things of that nature. On one hand, it could lead to job opportunities. But on the other hand, it's really just building connections. And it could be if you have a challenge and then reaching out to people like, hey, I'm really struggling with something and want to run something by you. But when you look at internal And this can really help your own engagement too. So I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I think part of it too is looking at what kind of meaningful connections are you building within your organization. Now, some of you who work remote, you're like, well, Tim, I'm not around people that much. Okay, sure. But then you need to get in and look at your email directory and or ask your manager, like, hey, how can I connect with other peers? And then see what your organization has. Maybe there's some committees you need to jump on. And then organically just start building that from there. But I think one of the keys is creating value for yourself. And in doing that, that's also going to create more of an interest and more of a reason for you to be committed to the work. Remember, if you listen to the first episode, is looking at commitment versus engagement. We need people to be committed, and engagement happens after commitment is in place. Now, as a manager, commitment is always an internally focused locus of control. Is you decide. No one decides you being committed. Sure, managers can drive down your commitments, but you ultimately determine how much commitment you're going to have. And so that's why it's vital for you to, hold yourself accountable. Ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, how would I evaluate myself? How engaged am I? And so when you start looking at that, then you're going to start being more mindful of, okay, what am I doing to move myself towards that? Holding myself accountable, asking for feedback, and really trying to grow as a manager, as someone who leads people. So I think that's a really good key to look at, and we'll get more into that. So Gallup looked at some recommendations, and not surprisingly, they said, well, organizations need to invest in their managers and develop them. And so, and that's what I do. With highly effective organizations, I'm constantly working with organizations around the country, and especially when they identify that there's a gap, there's a need to develop their managers at all levels. And so you get some people who really jump on that. They're like, yeah, I really want to take advantage of this. This is awesome. And there's always some people who are just like, yeah, I already know this. And I would say those people are, moderately or maybe not engaged, because if they can't see a management training opportunity and take advantage of it, and even if there's some stuff like, yeah, I know this, but maybe there's a new way of doing things, and so we want people, but also you have to look at the structure in your organization too. And that's something that I have found a lot, is the structure tends to be lacking. And if you don't have it top down where you're checking in with people, VP to director to manager to soup, or whatever it may be, is really having some core beliefs as an organization and being consistent with that. But again, it always comes down to yourself. How would you rate yourself? How engaged are you? And why are you engaged? And how could that engagement be improved? And so these are definitely things to look at. And so another cool thing that Gallup has mentioned is another reason why manager engagement is so vital, is that they have found that managers account for 70% of the overall engagement variance for employees, meaning a good 70% of employee engagement comes down to the manager, meaning the manager gives people a lot of reasons to be engaged. And this makes sense, because you've often probably heard that saying that people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And so I'm sure you've had a bad boss. I definitely have. And that bad boss will make you want to leave. And that's what happened to me. And it can have some far-reaching consequences. It's almost traumatic, to be honest with you, when it lasts long term based on what it's like working for that person. And so that can definitely drive down engagement. And that's unfortunate when that does happen. But, I think part of it too is what kind of relationship do you have with your manager, and being able to ask for feedback. And it's really interesting is that when I'm working with organizations, sometimes they'll put like their first layer of management through the highly effective managers program. But yet people will come to me and they'll say, how come my manager is not in this program? They need this stuff as much as I do. And so I think this kind of comes down to another observation is the higher up people move in their careers in the organization, the less development and less feedback they tend to receive. And so when that feedback loop stops, the growth stops. And so you're stuck with where you're at. And if you feel you're okay, then and no one's telling you anything different, then you continue as is. And so when we look at manager engagement, there's just many things to look at. And I think part of it comes down to really looking at yourself, that how connected are you to the mission of your organization, the purpose of your organization? What are you doing? Are you solving a problem? Is you're helping customers? What is it? And you want to feel good about that. Like, I like where I work at. I feel good about this. I feel like me and my team were making an impact. So I think part of that is to, number one, start with that. What is the mission of the organization? What is the mission statement, if you have one? Do you know what it is? And then making a journal entry is making a journal entry and saying, writing down, what does the mission mean to me? What does our mission mean to me? And how am I and my team contributing to that? And so I think that it's something vital to really look at on an individual basis. So there's that. And I think another thing too to look at is spending time with people, with your staff. That what are you doing to connect with people, all employees? Now, some people are more likable than others. So you may say, hey Tim, I got 3 people in my team. I love talking to them. What about the other 2? What about the other 2? And so then that's something that you definitely want to look at in terms of how can I go out of my comfort zone to engage them. And this leads to the other piece, is having meaningful conversations. And Gallup said this is one of the most vital leadership approaches that any people leader, any manager can do, is having meaningful conversations. Now, what is a meaningful conversation? It's what's meaningful to the employee. And so I remember for me, coming up, maybe just having a conversation about, maybe I'm just interested, like something like, why is this happening? And then it would have been great if my manager would have said, hey, Tim, why do you think that's happening? Let's talk about that. Let's go down that road. And that's what would have been meaningful to me. I'm very process oriented. So, but just learning about your staff. And if you haven't done this, you can even do like a little survey. And you can, print it up, or you just want to email it to them. Find a getting to know you kind of survey where you're asking them about, what are they passionate about? What motivates or inspires them? What are their professional goals, their career goals? What do they enjoy about their work? Things like that can really help people and help you form a connection with them. And then, when you're having your one-on-one meetings, you can definitely expand on those things. And so I think those are a couple really key things to look at in terms of how connected are you with your employees? And there may be some you really are, but what about the other ones? And so I think having those meaningful conversations is a really great way to connect with your employees. And this leads to meaningful professional experiences for people. And that's what, as a manager, that's what you want, is you want to help create a meaningful professional experience for your employees. And you do that through meaningful conversations, and then the meaningful action that comes from that in terms of things they share with you, you're going to follow up on it. You want to have conversations. You want to ask questions to show that you're interested. And that's a really key piece to look at. And so, but also just looking at, if you don't feel engaged, maybe asking your manager and talking to your manager and having a conversation saying, I know I'm looking at some research about employee engagement, and I'm looking for something to help, kind of motivate me a little bit sometimes. And, ask that. I think part of that too is having a good relationship with your manager. And if you're not getting that, then maybe try to seek that out from a colleague. You seek a meaningful professional connection. And one of the things that I recommend when I work with organizations is creating what I call a supervisory support group. And you can do it for each level within your organization. Supervisors, managers, directors, so forth and so on. And in that group, there'd only be peers. So no one else's manager is there. And you start with whoever, maybe a smaller group, 5, 7, 10 people. And hey, we're going to get together once a month. We'll block out 2 hours once a month. We'll get together. Whoever can make it, make it. If not, no problem. And we're going to talk about challenges. Not a complaint, not a griping session about, I don't like this, I don't like that. What are your challenges in leading people and getting things done with your team? And then just getting support from each other. And it could be an employee challenge, but this is a really key sustainability piece. That when people can get that support from their colleagues is when they can really start building some meaningful relationships, but also just building on their own meaningful experience, their meaningful professional experience. And you can't expect your manager to do that for you. While I'm encouraging you to do it for the people you lead, but when it comes to for you, you may have to get it from somewhere else. Your manager, it would be great if the things that you do, your manager does with you. But that may not be the case. Even if you share it with them, they may not in turn do those things or do it at a level that you like. So this is something for you to look at. Again, asking yourself, how engaged am I? And what am I doing? And what are some opportunities for me? Who can I connect with to make me feel more engaged, to make me feel more alive at work? And so, but I do think a really great place to start is with the people that you lead. How can you connect with them? And so, it's early in the week, but even this week, reach out to some of your staff and get something on the books. And hey, the next time you're one-on-one meeting, maybe you're just checking in. Hey, Tim, I just want to check in with you. How are things going? You're working on this project. Tell me about that. And ask questions. Ask a bunch of questions. Ask questions. Don't talk a lot. And just really show an interest. And even if you need to write out a couple questions ahead of time, just to help cue you so you can guide you, I definitely would do that. And we cover a lot of this stuff and so much more in the Highly Effective Managers Program. In fact, I have another session starting on July 24th. So you can go over to highlyeffectiveorganizations.org and sign up. You can sign up yourself, maybe some of your staff, or you can request a free copy of the Essential Handbook for Highly Effective Managers, and I'll send it to you. Send it to your organization, and so you can evaluate to see if your entire organization wants to go through the Highly Effective Managers Program that over 100 organizations and over 7,000 managers have gone through. So again, I think just looking at today, manager engagement, it's low and it can be a lot higher, but I think people need to look at, number one, how can I do this? And then look at creating those meaningful professional experiences with colleagues within your organization, and also connecting meaningfully with the employees that you lead. And I think if you do some of those things, you'll see a definite difference, not only in employee engagement and performance, but also yours. In fact, I'm looking at this one research here I forgot to mention, is that when managers are engaged, you're looking at manager performance metrics improve 20 to 28%. And usually Gallup is tying this into manager training. When managers go through training, that their manager performance metrics improve 20 to 28%. So whether you're through your organization, but also for yourself individually. And any questions, you can always send me an email, tim@modernleadershippodcast.com, and we'd love to answer them. And I'm always looking for guests, trying to build up a little guest list so I can add some people in the future. But again, today, manager engagement. What are some things you can do? Tim Nolan, Modern Leadership Podcast. Have a good one.